He confiscated in the last 2 or 3 days, right? 2 or 3 days, right? And he got called down while we were in the office to a washroom where someone was vaping because they were smoking in the washroom. So it's definitely a problem in our secondary schools, maybe not as much in our elementary, but in grade 6 or 7, there are kids that already are starting to do that. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my Healthy Schools Initiative counterpart from Fraser Health, Tracy Wong, and she will introduce the rest and start the session. Will the light people in the audience please give Tracy a big round of applause. Not everybody is great as me to stand in front of all of you. And a student coffee will go for you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Daniel. Okay. I really appreciate you coming on this snowy day to hear us speak about vaping. My name is Tracy Wong, as Daniel mentioned. I am a public health nurse, health out of the Cloverdale Health Unit, and I am the lead for the Surrey Healthy Schools team. Are a number of folks that are supporting the presentation and will also help to support the question and answer period as well. So Dori Madaviani is going to be taking the lead. She is a community health specialist with Fraser Health, and she will be leading our presentation today. Connie Banting, she is a, I gotta get this right, tobacco and vapor product control coordinator. Yay! She is also here to field questions, and particularly around some of the legislation pieces, if you have questions around that. We have Breezy Mitchell, who is a community health specialist for Surrey. And then we have Sherry Stephen-Smith, who is another Healthy Schools nurse supporting the Surrey School District. All right, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dori.
Perfect. Thank you for the introductions, Tracy, and for the land acknowledgement. So I'm just going to quickly go and give a brief overview of what vaping products are, what components they contain, and then we'll go into some of the emerging health evidence that we've collected for you and to share with you today. So vaping products have a lot of different names. Maybe even we could take a moment, because we are a smaller group right now. Can you share with me some of the names that you've heard in your school communities in the last few months? Okay, Jewel, perfect.
Shatter.
Pardon?
Shatter.
Shatter, okay, that's a new one for me, so thanks for sharing that. Okay, so other names are vapes, hookahs, e-hookahs, we've got mods, vape pens, tanks, so it's a lot of different names that we could be hearing out in our community on a regular basis, but with e-cigarettes being the most common. And then, so these e-cigarettes were first developed in 2003 by a Chinese company that wanted to focus on smoking cessation. And then eventually this evolved with being a more lifestyle product, and individuals were using it more for social behaviors rather than the potential medicinal purposes. And then we first saw e-cigarettes in the Canadian market in approximately 2007. And I would say it's been the last few years that there's been an increasing amount of usage within our youth population. So what are these products? These are devices that heat a liquid solution, typically called an e-juice, and they deliver an aerosol out into the environment. So this aerosol is sometimes called the cloud by a typical user. And then what sets them apart with traditional tobacco cigarettes is that they do not contain tobacco and they're not combustible. So these products may or may not contain nicotine in various amounts, and I'll get into some more details later on. So here we could see the relative evolution of the product. So initially the first generation product would typically look like a regular cigarette. They're called cigalikes. And then now recently within use, we see all of these on the right, with the Juul being pretty popular with our youth population. And these products, the newer generation products are easily modifiable. So you could change some of the aspects to then help you change the intensity of the cloud or the the throat hit that you might get from the product, and even the concentration of the different components can be changed as well. These newer products are also more effective at delivering nicotine, just because, for instance, the Juul is using nicotine salts, and in this format of nicotine, we get it delivered to our brain a lot more efficiently compared to the base form of nicotine. So all of these products have three main components: a lithium battery, which powers the atomizer, an atomizer that helps vaporize the liquid solution or the e-juice, and then we also have a tank that holds the e-juice, and then obviously the mouthpiece is used for taking that puff. So the contents of the vaping liquid, the e-juice, all of them contain propylene glycol, which is a clear, odorless compound or solution. It's typically used in the food industry, and it provides the throat hit. So when someone inhales, it's that sensation that you get from the back of your throat from taking that inhalation. And then we have vegetable glycerin, which is also an odorless compound, and that is the compound that helps produce that cloud. So you can imagine if someone is having a cloud competition, they might want an e-juice that has a higher concentration of this compound in their e-juice. And then we also have varying flavorings in there, and all these three components are safe for ingestion, but their long-term effects on inhalation have not been tested yet. And then lastly, the vaping liquids typically contain varying amounts of nicotine as well. So then heating this e-juice creates a lot of different toxicants. So before I go into that, I just wanted to talk a bit more about the nicotine content in the e-juice. So it is available in different strains from 0 to very high, with the Juul being one of the highest in the market right now. The amount of nicotine that's delivered to the body is highly variable. So this depends obviously on the nicotine concentration of the e-liquid, the inhalation frequency, and the type of device. So some devices have it in a form that's more effective at delivering. So like other consumer-based products, e-cigarette technology is also rapidly changing and evolving. And so earlier nicotine-containing products were delivering nicotine at a rate similar to nicotine replacement therapy. So that's why they could be potentially used for smoking cessation. And this was because they were using the free-base nicotine that I slightly explained in the beginning. However, new devices are able to deliver nicotine as efficiently as cigarette because they use nicotine salts. So it's important to know that guidance for use of NRT is typically the responsibility of a healthcare provider that has studied and knows the guidelines with regards to smoking cessation. But usage and the sales of e-cigarettes right now are falling under vape shops and online stores. So it's up to the owners of those shops and the workers to educate on smoking cessation. So as you can imagine, there is a slight conflict of interest there. Yeah.
So did you say that it's up to the vaping shops to educate the public?
So they're the ones right now that are educating with regards to e-cigarette usage. So if someone does go in, they're the ones that are giving the recommendation with regards to the amount of nicotine that should be in there, but they have not been trained in that.
And they make more money if they sell stuff with more nicotine, right?
I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah, potentially. So nicotine is an addictive drug. I don't think that's a surprise to any of us. We should note that people smoke for nicotine, but they don't die from it. It's all the other chemicals that come from smoking that leads to various illnesses and cancers and potentially death. So nicotine itself increases heart rate and blood pressure, and it's also known to alter brain development. So this is pretty crucial because our brains develop until we are approximately in our mid-20s. So within our youth generation, this impact is quite serious because those who vape before this age are at risk for not fully developing part of their brains, responsible for memory, mood, concentration, and impulse control. It also has a detrimental effect on a developing fetus, so pregnant women should also avoid vaping. So once nicotine is inhaled, it reaches the brain rapidly, where it stimulates the release of a host of neurotransmitters that affect different areas of the brain. So the brain's reward center is specially affected. The result is that the person experiences rewards, such as increased alertness, which in turn positively reinforces this behavior again. And over time, a tolerance is developed and higher amounts of nicotine are needed to achieve the same feelings and effects. So now going back to the toxicants in the aerosol. So once the e-juice is heated through a puff and then you inhale and also exhale it out into the environment, there is a number of chemicals that are produced. The level is known, based on our research today, to be lower in general compared to a general cigarette smoke. This does not mean that these toxicants are harmless. The levels of the toxicants can vary greatly across and within different brands. These toxicants contain, are created once the e-juice is heated, and they are some heavy metals, most commonly nickel, lead, and chromium, carbonyls such as formaldehyde and aldehyde, volatile organic compounds such as benzene, alcohol, and toluene, and tobacco nitrosamines, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and particulate matter. So particulate matter includes all of the above and a lot of different liquid and solid droplets such as dust and smoke. So on top of all of these issues that I've described, there are some other safety issues. Vaping products have been known to have exploded, causing fires that result in burns and injuries, and the root cause of this is the lithium battery. So this can result if the batteries aren't stored or charged properly, or overheated, or kept in a pressurized area. So clearly there's some concerns here, and this is why the BC Tobacco Control Act was amended in 2016 to include vapor products, becoming the Tobacco and Vapor Product Control Act. The rationale for regulating vapor products was to help curb the growing use of e-cigarettes by young people in BC and limit exposure to children of the potential dangers of the e-cigarette vapor that's created. Also, it's also avoiding the normalization of cigarette usage as well. So to protect youth specifically, retail sales are not allowed to those who are under 19 years of age. Displays are not allowed to target youth. Advertising cannot be visible to youth, and the use is prohibited on public and private school grounds. And then to protect the general population, and youth included, the sales of vaping products in public buildings are not permitted, and usage is banned in indoor public spaces and workplaces. At a federal level, the federal level's age limit is 18 years of age, so the BC legislation supersedes that. But the bill prohibits the promotion of vaping products that are appealing to youth, so such as products that contain dessert and candy flavors, and currently there are over 8,000 flavors on the market. It also restricts the promotion of vaping products, including a ban on all lifestyle advertising. So vapor product retailers will not be able to make health claims. For example, they can't compare the health impact of tobacco products relative to e-cigarettes. And clearly more restrictions are needed because as of now, the federal legislation allows all flavorings to be included in these e-juices. And they also need to require companies to have proper labeling on their products as well. So you might be wondering who is selling the regular vaping product on the market. So some of these companies may have initially started without any affiliations to tobacco, but now tobacco giants like Philip Morris and Imperial Tobacco are all own popular e-cigarette brands. So as of this last December in 2018, Philip Morris purchased 35% of Juul, which is approximately a $13 billion investment. So the same proven marketing tactics that were used many years ago are being used again. For instance, like having celebrity spokesperson or having glamorous women being shown in advertising. So on the right, you could see an advertisement of an e-cigarette today, and on the left is how it used to be approximately 50 years ago. And then this is just another example looking at the two. So there are many different avenues that vaping products can be purchased in Canada. They're available online at convenience stores and vape shops. The Juul is sold at Chevron. So there are currently no municipal regulations on where shops are located or their density. So in some communities, these shops are just showing up very close to high schools. And there are also adult-only stores that may have 19 plus on the outside, but once you do enter, they're allowed to show customers how to use these devices. So this is just a general overview comparing the cost of vaping products and tobacco, or tobacco cigarettes, and this is a general average, but the point of it is to say that the cost is a lot less than what it would be for someone to smoke cigarettes, but it's still an unnecessary and sometimes costly expense for youth that do use vaping products. So if you look at patterns of use in Canadians, youth, young adults, and adults who smoke are the main, group that uses e-cigarettes. So there's 65% are dual users. One big issue with this is that for something to be a cessation aid, the ideal scenario would be that for you to switch to that new tool, and then eventually for you to wean off of that tool moving forward. But within the dual usage user population, a lot of people are using e-cigarettes as a form of convenience in places that they're not able to smoke. And we can see that 15% of the population have never smoked before. Although this seems like a small comparison to our 65%, it's still a concern and needs to be addressed. So looking at the evidence of whether vaping products are an effective smoking cessation tool, to date, the effectiveness is inconclusive. However, there is moderate evidence that shows that nicotine-containing e-cigarettes are more effective than non-nicotine containing products. But the recommendation still maintains with regards to other nicotine replacement therapies that we have on the market. Looking at student e-cigarette use in BC, this is 2016-2017 data, so I can only imagine that numbers have gone up since then. But as we can see, with Ever Tried, within the grade 7 to 9 population, it's 12%, and 34% of the more senior age group have tried it. And then the past 30 days, assumes that these individuals are regular users. So 6% in the junior level and 18% in the senior level. So there are varying reasons why I use vape. First of all, they're cool and attractive. They're a novel product. It makes them feel rebellious just because they're able to conceal. When they're using it potentially in a classroom, they might take a puff and then exhale in their sleeve. So that idea of being able to conceal is attractive to them. It helps them to fit in, so it might be a social activity for them. And they might think that it's completely harmless just because there's been a lot of misconceptions around that the vapor is just water vapor and there are no harms to your health. And lastly, they may like the physiological effect that they get from the nicotine or any of the other chemicals. So these are some of the reasons that we gathered through our literature searches. So community or school-specific reasons may be different, and we would love to hear those from you as we move forward. So there are some pretty cool devices. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these being used, and youth are attracted to them. The Juul, being a relatively new product, represented approximately 1/3 of the market sales in 2017. And so within that population, the Juul is considered the iPhone X. So it's easy to use, it's attractive. So they just want to use it or be involved in that process of usage. And the act of using a Juul is typically coined as juuling. So there are some concerns with regards to Juul. One Juul pod is approximately equivalent to 1 pack of cigarettes, and this normally involves 200 puffs. So how long it takes them to go through this clearly depends on how frequently they use it. The manufacturers of Juul have combined free-base nicotine with benzoic acid to create the salt. So this, again, this is the form that is very effective at delivering nicotine to the brain. It's as addictive as tobacco cigarette. And with regards to the Juul, I'm not sure how many of you have seen it, but it's a fairly small USB-looking device, and youth can easily conceal its usage. So they can use the Juul, or they could be juuling anywhere from the bathrooms or in between classes, and they could hide it in their pencil case and no one would notice that they're using it. So then now we're going to review some of the emerging health evidence that we have collected for you. So we've used the National Academies of Science, Medicine, and Engineering report as it is the most thorough review to date. Their evidence has been rated into subcategories, as conclusive evidence being one. So with regards to conclusive evidence, we know that indoor use increases airborne concentrations of particulate matter. So this exceeds WHO's air quality guideline values. Most devices contain and emit many potentially toxic substances, and the devices can explode, causing burns and injuries. So pretty much from what I've presented to you today, we don't know much about the effects moving forward just yet. With regards to substantial evidence, the nicotine content can be comparable to tobacco among experienced users. Heavy metals are present in the aerosol, so the cloud that's produced, and usage results in symptoms of dependence. Now, with regards to the last point, saying that there is an increased risk of ever using tobacco cigarettes among youth and young adults, there is contradicting evidence with regards to this. There are pretty much two groups. One group talks about this and looks at this as the gateway theory. So someone who uses e-cigarettes is bound to end up using regular tobacco cigarettes. And the other group is the joint susceptibility hypothesis, which states that those individuals that are using e-cigarettes have the same shared risk factors, and they would have resulted to using tobacco regardless. So as you can tell, there is contradicting evidence, and we need to have more controlled research moving forward to help us accurately have some insights. With regards to moderate evidence, there is increased coughing and wheezing as a result of usage. There is an association with worsening of asthma symptoms, and youth and young adults who use vaping products and move on to smoke tobacco will end up using tobacco products more frequently and with greater intensity. So we need more research in this field, and we need to know more about the short-term and long-term health effects, how usage affects initiation of tobacco products, and if vaping products are as effective as other smoking cessation aids. So once we have insights with regards to these points, we can identify whether e-cigarettes will reduce harm or induce harm at an individual and population level. So I've alluded to this earlier. There is this controversy between it being beneficial or harmful. So there is two groups within this field as well. One group is saying that this is for harm reduction, and if every single smoker would switch to an e-cigarette, then it would be a public health miracle, because we know that the chemicals that are in there right now, to date, they're less harmful in comparison to a typical tobacco cigarette smoking regimen. But that is only if we don't bring in the youth and the non-smokers into that group. And then obviously there are others that are concerned with the harmful constituents that are included in e-cigarettes, and the risks of non-smokers starting to use e-cigarettes, and the transition from vaping to smoking. So just quickly, some conclusions. As I mentioned, a significant public health achievement would result if a great majority of smokers switched and transitioned to using e-cigarettes. But as the data shows us, that 65% currently are dual users, so this quick transition is not happening. And the evidence that we have right now is sufficient to warn children and adolescents, pregnant women, and women of reproductive age against the use of nicotine-containing vaping products. So vaping products are unlikely to be harmless. Their long-term use is expected to increase the risk of a lot of different lung and heart diseases. And there is specifically no value in knowing how much safer it is in comparison to tobacco cigarettes. So I just wanted to give a little disclaimer at the end, saying that there's a lot of contradictory evidence out there right now with regard to vaping products as a cessation aid, as well as them being a gateway tool. So what we try to do today is to share with you the most evidence-based controlled research that's available right now. So now that we've talked about some of the background information and the emerging health evidence that's coming out of it, I wanted to talk about some potential next steps of what we could do at a school district and at a school level. So according to BC legislation, it is the school district's administrators' responsibility to ensure that regulations are upheld on a school property or a school grounds level. And just to reiterate, smoking and vaping are banned on school grounds. So to be able to do that and prevent smoking and vaping in an effective and sustainable manner, we recommend that you involve and engage teachers and parents and students into your task groups or working groups, and this will allow for a shared understanding and to identify common goals moving forward. And conversations about vaping products can be started by planning various school-wide activities or competitions. I know one school in Surrey is planning a poster competition that aims to...
The whole district?
Oh, the whole district
the
is
whole
planning.
District, yeah.
Perfect. Is to relay the known and unknown health messages of vaping. So this is just a method to get the conversation going. And lastly, we recommend that you promote school-based prevention programs and try to ensure that designated vaping areas are not created within the vicinity of the school. And please know that Fraser Health is here to help you with these steps, and we've already been actively working to meet some of the already identified needs. So with regards to having conversation with teens, it's best to have open and honest conversations. Keep the conversation going and be absolutely okay with the idea that it's not going to be a one-time event. Be patient and listen readily. And we could have these conversations in our classrooms too. So what we've done is aligned our presentation points with the BC curriculum for the grade 6 level and the grade 9 level. So teachers can use some aspects of these presentations to share within their classrooms. And then there was an absolute need for some resources to be created. So we are in the final stages of creating some resources with partnership with BC Lung Association and Vancouver Coastal Health. So probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a frequently asked question pamphlet coming out, an information package for teachers that goes into the evidence in a bit more detail, and an information package for families that gives some suggestions to start that conversation and potential questions that they might have or their child might have as well. And then lastly, just an infographic that goes over what these products are, what's included in the vapor, and what the top health effects that we know of are. And then that is it on my part, and I'd like to open it up to questions.
All right. So thank you very much. Yeah. So I know that we have. I know that some people probably couldn't make it, but we are live streaming, so there might be people watching this as well. So if you have any questions about it from an administrator's point of view, I think we have Manish here from Safe Schools as well, who can answer some of the Safe Schools perspectives. I know that we're confiscating a lot of these things. What do we do? Who's going to come pick up the bags and bags of vapes that we collect, right? We also have 4 other Fraser Health public health nurses here. So even when the presentation portion of this ends, we have it on YouTube. So in terms of the slides of the presentation, but we also have food here. So if you want to talk to them, you know, as we are gathered around food, which is also the best time for conversation, I think that we can also ask some, you know, school-based, individually school-based questions at that time as well. But if there are any questions that you want to ask, please remember we are live streaming. So any questions you might have, other people might have as well. So. You might want to take a time to think. They're also, as she can tell you, as you're thinking,
and then once we're done our questions, we'd really appreciate your feedback. So if you could fill out the survey that we've created, it will help us with the upcoming presentations moving forward as well.
Any questions? No questions?
So, okay, I'm an elementary school administrator. I haven't seen any in school. Doesn't mean it's not there, but we haven't seen any in our schools.
Oh, they're there.
I mean, in the building.
Yeah.
So, like, is there a residual smell on these kids, or in the atmosphere? Like, you walk by somebody who smokes tobacco, you can tell, right? So, whether they had one right then or in the past. So, what are some clues we're watching for? I mean, I've seen people been in, you know, outside and got walking down the street. When adults are vaping, so it dissipates relatively quickly, but what about inside, and can you smell anything on these kids?
It will depend. There's so many flavors.
Do you want to give her the mic?
So it depends on the flavor?
So like it might be like a mango flavor, so you might get that fake artificial mango flavor residue left behind. But the whole thing with vapor products is that it doesn't have the same horrible smell and scent as tobacco products.
I know it won't smell like tobacco products, but it might smell like some fake air freshener, big
Yep.
flavor.
Or bubble
Yeah.
tea. It might smell like you're drinking bubble
And
tea.
then-
Right, yeah.
Just, yeah.
Maybe sweeter type flavors, yeah, like fruity flavors or like dessert types of like creme brulee, pina colada.
Mango.
Yeah, that makes it tricky because a lot of people, a lot of young people wear like with sprays that have.
Spray or like lotion sometimes, yeah.
Just because we're talking on the aspect of elementary schools, we are creating a pre-initiation presentation that teachers can give in their grade 5 to 7 classrooms, and it's quite interactive and basic with regards to like what these are and some of the health effects as well, and they will be coupled with the resources I showed as well.
We did have a grade 4 yesterday.
Oh, I'm not questioning that kids are doing. So for secondary colleagues, are your students vaping in the bathroom, walking down the hall, in classes, like?
They're nodding to all of us.
Yes, all three.
Keep going.
It's for Joe here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Freeze away, like, oh.
We seem to be behind the 8 ball on this one. Like, is there government attempting to catch up with some of the legislation and controls associated with the sale of vapes, and are young people getting a hold of the products?
BC legislation, it does prohibit the sale of vape products to people under 19 years of age. We do have inspectors, and we do regularly inspect the retail stores. However, there are a lot of loopholes. We know a lot of kids are getting them online. And right now, we don't have anything in place to regulate online sales, so that is definitely a loophole. And we also know they're getting it from their older brother, older cousin, sometimes their parents. So that's very difficult for government to control. So.
Is there anyone monitoring who is making the vape juice and what is going into those products? And because we're seeing every time we confiscate one, it's a different brand with a different label.
Currently, no.
You, sir. You.
Yeah.
You're
I mean, manufacturer would fall under the federal government's jurisdiction, but as of the legislation that is currently in place, there is no legislation.
You said that there's these are not supposed to be marketed to kids, but every single one of these that I confiscate with juice has got some funny, fruity nickname, or the ones that are laced with THC. It's something that's attractive. So I would suggest if any of you have the ear of government, it's not working. Like, truthfully, they are specifically, especially with the legalization of marijuana, where adults no longer have to go underground. This is being marketed directly to children.
Mm-hmm. While we're on the topic of advertising, Health Canada right now, there currently is a public consultation regarding the advertising. So they are looking to make the rules a little bit stricter. So I don't know if there's a way I can send out the link, but the federal government, they currently are taking in comments from everybody. So
if you send me the link,
I can. Yeah, Daniel, I'll send you the link, and then you can send it out. It might be nice if the school district could even get together and put in, a response.
Let me ask. Can I ask a safe schools question? So in the schools, I know that people are collecting them. You guys are confiscating them. Like, is there even we're just creating the rules as we go, right? Like, we're suspending you for X number of days because you have these vapes. Like, is there some district policy that you're aware of that's being created to govern how we act? Because again, in my 22 sites, we collect them all the time, right? And I'm sure in all these sites as well, even some elementary schools. Do you know anything?
The conversations are happening right now. So the approach to it is that if we have a student who is caught vaping, we confiscate it, and then the parent has an option to pick it up, but only one and go. After that, they're no longer in ours. Goes to the section.
And do you expect administrators then to contact you at Safe School to let you know?
If you have
the
a
same way we
question
do
of
with.
bags, we can take those off your hands. Give us email. Yeah.
For those who don't know, this is Mandish, last name? Saran, who's the new assistant manager or associate manager, I don't know what you go by, assistant manager of Safe Schools, working with Sarah McKay. So. Any other questions?
I brought samples.
You brought samples? Nice.
Oh, wow.
Michelle Larson.
Michelle Larson has texted in a question.
Yeah, so she was saying that her kids are using prepaid cards online to buy their vapes and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a little late, sorry.
Yeah. See, people are able to text in questions. See how technology that's why we have
Technology,
empty
it's fun.
seats. It's my own fault. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, I mean, please do their survey. You just point your iPhone camera at this QR. You can do their survey. We are planning to host in all six zones at 6 different schools for parents, counselors, teachers. We'll also be trying to stream those online as well for people who can't make it. You can see that we're sort of testing that here as well. It's sort of working, which is great. I've also tweeted some of these slides out as well. But please eat this food and drink the coffee and maybe talk to our Fraser Health nurses. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves just so people know who you are and know who to approach if they have individualized questions about their schools? Yes?
I'll go first. I'm Dory. I'm a community health specialist.
I'm Connie. I'm the coordinator with the Tobacco and Vapor Products Control Program.
Hi, I'm Tracy Wong. I am the lead for the Surrey Healthy Schools team.
I'm Sherry Speaking-Smith, and I'm also part of the Surrey Healthy School, whatever, my mom's not working anymore. Healthy School Surrey team.
Hi, I'm Breezy Mitchell. I'm the community health specialist for Surrey.
So again, please approach these nice people and talk to them about some of the concerns you might have. Also, we have Mandesh from Safe Schools that can answer your questions and take bags off your hands. Apparently, if you've brought those as well.
I've been hearing they've been adding up, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Different schools. So, if you have any questions, school district-based stuff.
Yeah. So we are setting dates for all 6 zones. As soon as I have those dates, I will email them out. This will be available on our webpage, right? The link for this, right? So that you can go back and look at it again if you need to, or share it with colleagues. And yeah, so thank you all for coming, and thank you so much for presenting. It's not easy to present to a group of administrators, and really appreciate your time. There you go. We've got like 40, 30. That's great. Big round of applause. Thank you. All right. So please eat this food, or else I have to take it home to my children.